I was scrolling through a Chinese social media feed the other day and came across a video that felt like a fever dream of the near future. It wasn't a high-tech demo from a lab, it was just a regular guy in Shanghai sitting in the driver's seat of his new EV, hands behind his head, while the car navigated a chaotic, rain-slicked intersection. No interventions, no panic, just a car thinking its way through a swarm of delivery scooters. The comments weren't even surprised, they were impatient. One person wrote, "My car still misses the lane markings when it rains. When is the teacher arriving?" That teacher they are waiting for isn't a person, it's a massive invisible brain. For years, Tesla has been the undisputed heavyweight of self-driving, but in China, they've been fighting with one hand tied behind their back. Because of strict data laws, Tesla couldn't send Chinese driving data back to the US to train its AI, and US rules made it nearly impossible to build the necessary brainpower on Chinese soil. It was a technological stalemate that saw Tesla's market share slip to fifth place as local rivals like BYD and Xiaomi began flooding the streets with their own autonomous systems. But this week, the silence broke. Grace Tao, Tesla's VP, quietly confirmed that their China-focused AI training center is officially live. No location, no budget figures, just a simple acknowledgement that they finally have the computing power to compete. It marks a surreal turning point. The world's most famous EV maker is effectively building a second localized soul for its cars just to survive in the world's most cutthroat market. The irony is palpable. While the US and China decouple in almost every other sector, Tesla is embedding itself deeper into Chinese infrastructure than ever before. We are about to witness a high-speed collision between American neural networks and Chinese road complexity, and by the end of 2026, thousands of these Level 3 cars will be making their own decisions on the open road. The question is no longer if the cars can drive themselves, but whose AI will learn the local unwritten rules of the road first.
It's that car in the rain.
It's incredible, just the casualness of it.
But if we pull back from that intersection in Shanghai, what we are really looking at is a pivotal moment in the history of intelligent infrastructure. We are seeing a shift where the car is no longer just a product. It's a terminal. It's a node connected to a national nervous system.
Right, and that's what hit me about the teacher comment. It's so telling. It feels like the consumers there aren't just waiting for a software update for their car. They're waiting for this massive national infrastructure to kick in.
They're waiting for the brain to come online.
Exactly. It feels like we are at a tipping point, not just for Tesla, but for how we even think about smart cities in general.
Precisely. And I think it's crucial to zoom out here. This isn't just a corporate press release about a data center.
Yeah.
It is a window into a much larger national strategy. We are seeing the convergence of, well, massive state capacity, a survival of the fittest market dynamic that is unlike anything in the West, and a very strategic pivot in how China handles data and technology.
It's intense. It really feels like everything is moving at warp speed over there.
We are witnessing the result of long-term planning meeting immediate market execution. It's new productive forces in action, a term we are seeing pop up everywhere in the documentation.
New productive forces. It sounds a bit abstract, like something from a dusty economics textbook. But today we are going to look at the machinery behind that car in the rain. We aren't just talking about cars, we are talking about the physical engines driving this change. And to get a sense of what that actually looks like, I think we have to go to the ground level. I heard a story about a hardware engineer named Lao Chen stationed at a newly minted data center on the outskirts of Shanghai. He described the site not as a building, but as a living, breathing organism of cooling fans and fiber optics. Imagine standing in a hall where the hum of thousands of high-performance GPUs creates a vibration you can feel in your marrow. This is the physical manifestation of what we call state capacity. Lao Chen recalled the night the new Tesla AI training cluster went live. The local power grid had been upgraded in record time to feed this digital brain. To him, this wasn't just about corporate expansion, it was about the sheer industrial power required to anchor global technology within their own borders. Watching the power meter spike, he felt he was witnessing the pulse of a new era. My take on this is that as someone who tracks tech shifts, I find Lao Chen's perspective striking. While the scale of such energy consumption might raise eyebrows in the West regarding sustainability, from his viewpoint, it's the ultimate metric of progress. It's a raw physical proof of an Eastern technological ascendancy that doesn't just theorize about the future, but builds the massive energy-hungry foundations to house it.
That vibration Lao Chen describes, that hum, that is the sound of policy becoming reality. What he is witnessing is the tangible result of the action plan for the high-quality development of computing power infrastructure.
Okay. Action plan for the high-quality development of computing power infrastructure. It sounds like typical bureaucratic naming, but based on what Lao Chen saw, the marrow-shaking vibration, this isn't just some memo sitting in a filing cabinet, is it?
Not even close.
So what does that plan actually entail? Because computing power usually sounds like something you upgrade on your laptop, not a national mandate.
Well, think of it as a utility, like electricity or water. The Chinese government has explicitly categorized computing power, or compute as they call it, as a new productive force. Just as railroads defined the 19th century and electricity defined the 20th, they are betting that compute defines the 21st.
That's a huge bet.
It's a civilization-level bet.
Yeah.
And the plan sets incredibly specific hard targets. For example, they have a goal to reach a compute scale of 300 EFLOPS by 2025.
300 EFLOPS. Okay, I'm going to need you to stop right there and translate that into human terms. My brain kind of glosses over once we get past terabyte. What is an EFLOP?
It stands for exafloating point operations per second. Put simply, it is a billion calculations per second.
A billion. Billion. Okay, that's still hard to visualize. Can you give me another analogy?
Yes. To give you a sense of scale, one EFLOPS is roughly equivalent to 500,000 mainstream server CPUs working in unison, or about 2 million high-end laptops all crunching numbers at once.
2 million laptops is one EFLOPS.
So 300 EFLOPS is a staggering amount of raw power. Imagine if every single person on Earth, all 8 billion of us, held a calculator and did one calculation per second. It would take us years, maybe decades, to match what this national system can do in a single second.
That is terrifyingly massive. And this isn't just for storing cat photos or processing emails, right? You don't need 300 EFLOPS to run a social media feed.
No, and that's the key distinction in the plan. It explicitly mandates a shift toward intelligent compute. The goal is for 35% of this total power to be dedicated specifically to AI neural network training, inference, the kind of heavy lifting required for self-driving cars like Tesla's FSD.
So a third of this mind-boggling number is just for AI.
At least a third. It's a pivot from just storing data to processing intelligence. The infrastructure is being purpose-built for the age of AI.
So when Tesla's VP, Grace Tao, says they finally have the computing power to compete, she's not just talking about buying a few racks of servers from, Best Buy. She's talking about plugging into this national initiative.
Exactly. And it's not just about the raw numbers. It's about the geography of it, the layout. This is where the engineering gets really interesting. China is executing a strategy called East Data, West Computing.
Okay, that sounds like a logistical puzzle.
It's an optimization strategy on a continental scale. The demand for data processing, the apps, the financial markets, the self-driving cars, is largely in the East, in places like Shanghai and Beijing.
Where all the people are.
Where the people and the economic activity are.
Yeah.
But land is expensive there. Expensive. You can't just keep building massive heat-generating servers in downtown Shanghai. It's not sustainable.
Right.
So they've established massive hub nodes in the West, in provinces like Guizhou, Inner Mongolia, Gansu, Ningxia.
Okay, because the West is vast, less populated, and has different energy resources.
Correct. Energy is abundant and cheaper there. Wind, solar, hydro, and the climate is cooler. In Inner Mongolia or Guizhou, you can use the ambient air to cool these massive data centers for a good chunk of the year. It massively helps with the PUE, the power usage effectiveness. It's just a more efficient place to put the hardware.
So they're shipping the data across the country to be processed and then sending the answers back. I mean, that sounds slow.
Yes. But here's the problem you just identified: latency.
The speed of light.
Exactly. You're fighting physics. To make that work for something like a self-driving car or high-frequency trading or real-time AI inference where milliseconds matter, you need incredible speed. Distance is the enemy.
So how do they solve that?
That's why the action plan includes carrying capacity goals. They are mandating direct network transmission with latency no higher than 1.5 times the theoretical limit of light traveling through fiber.
Wait, 1.5 times the theoretical limit. That's remarkably precise. And frankly, you're fighting physics at that point. How do you legislate the speed of light?
You don't legislate physics, but you legislate the infrastructure that governs it. The 1.5 times target forces the telecom providers to strip out every single piece of inefficiency from the network. It means replacing electrical switches, which require converting light to electricity, processing it, and then turning it back to light with all optical switches. Every conversion adds nanoseconds of delay. It means laying hollow core fiber in some instances, where light actually travels faster through the air inside the cable than it does through solid glass.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
It's cutting-edge stuff. They are effectively building a computational nervous system across the continent that is as close to instantaneous as physics allows.
Wow.
Yes. They are deploying 400G and even 800G high-speed optical transmission networks. This ensures that when a company like Tesla sets up a training center, even if the physical hardware sits in a data cluster 1,000 miles away in the desert, the connection is immediate. It's creating a unified national computer.
That puts Lao Chen's story in a whole new light, the living, breathing organism he talked about. It's real. It's this massive interconnected grid. And I noticed he mentioned the power grid was upgraded in record time.
That is the state capacity aspect in action. When the directive comes down from the central government to prioritize intelligent compute, the grid operators, the telecommunications companies, and the local governments align instantly. There is no multi-year permitting limbo. The power lines get laid, the fiber gets spliced, and the center goes live. It's a level of coordination that's hard to achieve elsewhere.
It's impressive efficiency. But I have to ask, Lao Chen mentions sustainability. In the West, we hear data center, and we immediately think carbon footprint. Is this just a massive coal-burning exercise to fuel the AI race?
It's a valid question, and one the plan addresses head-on. They are obsessed with PUE power usage effectiveness. It's a key metric. The plan mandates a PUE of less than 1.25 for new national hub data centers.
PUE of 1.25. What's a good or bad number?
It means for every 1.25 units of energy coming into the building, one full unit goes strictly to the computing equipment. Only 0.25 is wasted on things like cooling and lighting. That is a world-class standard. For context, many older data centers operate at 1.5 or 1.6, meaning a lot more energy is wasted.
So they're building inefficiency from the ground up.
Absolutely. They are pushing liquid cooling, which is far more efficient than air cooling. They're looking at waste heat recycling, where the heat from the servers is used to, say, warm nearby buildings. And they're integrating green energy sources like the wind and solar from those Western provinces directly. It's high consumption, yes, but it's designed to be hyper-efficient.
So it's not just brute force, it's engineered efficiency. Tesla plugging into this means they aren't just renting space, they are tapping into a state-coordinated supergrid designed specifically for this AI moment.
And that is why the teacher is finally arriving, as that commenter put it. The infrastructure is now ready to support the lesson plan.
But infrastructure is only half the battle, right? You can have the biggest brain in the world, but you need to know what to learn. And that brings us to the market itself. Because while Tesla was waiting for its computing power, the streets of China didn't stop moving. In fact, they became a battlefield.
A battlefield is an apt description, an absolute crucible.
I was reading a series of posts from a young software developer at a domestic EV startup in Hefei who described the invisible war in the streets. He spoke of the collective survival model, not as a textbook theory, but as a relentless 24/7 race where missing a single software iteration could mean his company's obsolescence. He recounted a rainy Tuesday evening when he watched an elderly couple in a budget-friendly local EV navigate a chaotic 5-way intersection autonomously. For him, the 996 work culture and the brutal competition weren't just about profit, they were the engines of a high-tech public utility. The massive market scale, that 70% global share, isn't just a statistic to him. It's the reason his grandmother can now travel safely in a car that learns from millions of other drivers every second. My take on this is that it's easy to criticize the hyper-competitive involution of the Chinese tech sector from a distance. However, hearing this developer's pride, I have to acknowledge the result-oriented efficiency. They are translating intense, perhaps even harsh competition into tangible improvements in mobility for the average citizen at a speed that traditional markets simply can't match. It's a communal push toward a future where smart is a standard, not a luxury.
That phrase he used, collective survival model, is fascinating. It really captures the essence of what economists often call competitive Darwinism in the Chinese context.
Hence, competitive Darwinism. We usually think of Darwinism as survival of the fittest, which, well, it implies a lot of death.
And there is a lot of it. Look at the numbers. In 2019, China had over 500 registered EV companies. Everyone wanted a piece of the pie. It was the gold rush.
500 companies. I can't even name 10 car companies in the U.S. right now. That's unbelievable.
Exactly. But fast forward to 2024, and consolidation has brought that down to about 50 competitive firms.
Yeah.
Companies like WM Motor, Byton, Singulato, you might remember their flashy launch events. They burned through billions of dollars in just vanish.
They couldn't keep up.
They had nice prototypes, but they couldn't scale, or they couldn't keep up with the software updates, so they ran out of cash. From 500 to 50, that is a 90% extinction rate. It is absolutely brutal.
It is, but the ones that are left.
The ones that are left are battle-hardened. The 50 that survived, companies like BYD, Xiaomi, Li Auto, Zeekr, they are the crouching tigers. They survived the crucible of fierce domestic competition, insane price wars, and relentless software iteration. They didn't just survive, they evolved into global champions.
So the state's role here is what? To just set up the arena and let them fight to the death?
Yes, the state supports the industry as a whole with policies, subsidies for buyers, and infrastructure. But it lets the individual companies fight it out to see who is worthy of that support in the long run. It's not about the government picking one winner at the start and saying, you're the chosen one. It's the government saying, here is the arena, here are the resources, now fight, and the winner gets to represent us on the world stage.
And the prize for surviving is massive scale. You mentioned that 70% statistic. China accounted for roughly 70% of global EV sales recently. That is an enormous data set.
And data is the fuel for AI. It's the only fuel that matters for autonomous driving. This creates what we call a training flywheel. More cars on the road means more edge cases encountered, more of those rain-slick intersections, more delivery scooters cutting across lanes, more pop-up construction zones.
The unwritten rules of the road.
Exactly. That data feeds back into the system, the AI gets smarter, the cars get safer, sales go up, and there are even more cars on the road gathering even more data. It's a virtuous cycle.
And Tesla was stuck outside this flywheel for a long time.
They were spinning their wheels, literally. Without that local training center, they couldn't close the loop. They couldn't learn from Chinese roads in real time. Meanwhile, local rivals like XPeng and Huawei's AITO have been training on Chinese roads for years. Their systems are native to that chaos.
And this isn't just theoretical testing anymore, is it? We aren't talking about demo cars with safety drivers ready to grab the wheel.
No, we are way past that. The regulatory green light has been lit. The Ministry of Industry and Information Technology has already authorized companies like Chang'an and BAIC to build and sell Level 3 vehicles.
Level 3. Let's pause on that because I think a lot of people hear Level 2, Level 3, Level 4, and it just sounds like marketing jargon. Level 2 is what most of us have now with systems like autopilot, right? I have to keep my hands on the wheel or at least pay attention. If I crash, it's my fault.
Correct. Level 2 is driver assist. You're the captain, the computer is the first mate, you're always responsible. Level 3 is a massive legal and technical jump.
So,
Level 3 is conditional automation. In specific approved conditions, like a traffic jam on a highway, the car is the captain. You can take your hands off the wheel and your eyes off the road. You can watch a movie, you can answer emails.
So if the car crashes in Level 3 mode, who goes to jail? Me or the algorithm?
Question. And in China, the new regulations are shifting liability toward the OEM, the manufacturer, when the system is engaged.
Ow.
This forces the companies to be incredibly confident in their tech. It changes the game from a cool feature to a guaranteed service with legal liability.
That is a high-stakes gamble for the car companies. But it explains why the development is so aggressive. You have to be perfect.
And this isn't a pilot program in a fenced-off office park. This is commercial deployment. By 2026, we expect thousands of these L3 cars on the open road making their own decisions.
That timeline is incredibly aggressive. In the West, we're used to Elon time, you know? FSD is coming next year, and it's been next year for a decade.
Elon time versus Beijing time. It's a different clock speed. In China, when the regulatory framework aligns with corporate desperation, things move at a blistering pace. The developer in Hefei mentioned that missing a single software iteration could mean obsolescence. That fear drives speed.
It really highlights the difference in mindset. That developer isn't just coding for a paycheck. He sees it as building a high-tech public utility. He sees his grandmother in that car.
We often view this race purely through the lens of corporate profits or stock prices. But for the people on the ground, like that developer, the invisible war is about creating a safer, more efficient society. The involution, that intense internal competition, is actually producing a public good. Better mobility for everyone, not just the wealthy.
So Tesla enters this arena, a place where 450 companies have already died, where the survivors are battle-hardened, and where the data flywheel is spinning at maximum velocity. It feels like they aren't the disruptor here anymore. They're the underdog.
In the context of the Chinese market, yes, you could absolutely argue that. They are playing catch-up, and building this AI center is the ante just to sit at the table.
But this brings up a bigger question. We see the infrastructure, the 300 exaflops. We see the market, the survival of the fittest. But is there a master plan? Because this pattern, it feels familiar. We've seen this movie before, haven't we?
There's absolutely a blueprint here. Economists and policy experts often call it the follow then lead innovation model.
Follow then lead. Yes. Because usually we hear about innovation as this lightning bolt of genius, someone in a garage inventing something brand new. This sounds more systematic, much more deliberate.
It is deeply systematic. It is a structured approach to acquiring, absorbing, and then surpassing foreign technology. It generally operates on 4 pillars.
Yes.
Pillar 1 is coordinated multi-level governance. You have the central government setting the big targets, things like the 5-year plans or the Made in China 2025 initiative. But then, crucially, you have the local execution. Provinces and even cities compete with each other to house these industries.
Like what we see with Hefei and EVs.
Exactly. Hefei's government made a huge, risky bet on EV maker NIO when it was struggling, and it paid off. Now they're known as the EV capital. Guizhou competes to be the data capital because of its cool climate and cheap power. It's like the Olympics of industrial development. Every province wants the gold medal for a key industry, and they'll offer land, tax breaks, and talent to get the companies to move there.
Coordinated competition.
But Pillar 2 is the strategy itself. Follow then lead. It has 3 distinct phases. Phase 1 is technology acquisition. You partner with global leaders, you invite them in, you create joint ventures.
Like inviting Tesla to build a gigafactory in Shanghai. I remember when that happened, people were surprised China allowed a wholly owned foreign factory with no local partner.
But it wasn't charity. Tesla was the catfish brought in to stir up the tank. The local EV market was getting a bit lazy, relying on subsidies. Tesla came in, set a high standard for quality and efficiency, and frankly, it terrified the local companies into innovating or dying.
It lit a fire under them.
A huge one. Then comes phase 2, scale and cost reduction. You use your massive domestic market, the biggest in the world, to drive production volume up and costs down. We saw this with solar panels. Chinese manufacturing scale caused costs to drop by 90% in a decade.
And phase 3, the lead apart.
Phase 3 is indigenous innovation. You move from copying or adapting to creating entirely new standards. You've learned from the best, you've mastered the supply chain, and now you start to surpass the original teachers.
That explains the solar panel industry perfectly. I remember when German companies were the kings of solar. They invented a lot of the underlying tech.
In the 2000s, Germany was the undisputed leader. But China absorbed that tech, scaled it up in massive industrial parks, and now they dominate over 80% of the global supply chain for solar panels. It wasn't an accident. It was the playbook in action.
And high-speed rail. That feels like the poster child for this.
The absolute poster child. It started with partnerships with Kawasaki from Japan, Siemens from Germany, Alstom from France. They bought the trains, but more importantly, they bought the blueprints. Chinese engineers worked alongside foreign experts. They absorbed the tech, learned the maintenance, the signaling, everything.
They learned the whole system.
The entire ecosystem. And then they built the CRH-380.
The CRH-380.
It's their own indigenous model. It's faster and cheaper than the originals it was based on. And now China exports high-speed rail technology to the world. They went from student to master in under 2 decades.
So applying this to EVs, Tesla coming in was phase 1. The explosion of 500 EV companies, the price wars, the scaling, that was phase 2. And now, with BYD overtaking Tesla in global sales and companies like Huawei building arguably better autonomous systems for the Chinese environment, are we in phase 3?
We are firmly entering phase 3. The follow part is over. Now comes the lead.
There are 2 more pillars, right? What are 3 and 4?
Pillar 3 is targeted subsidies. Massive, sustained financial support to bridge the valley of death for new tech. This isn't just R&D grants. It's consumer subsidies to create a market. It's low-interest loans for factories. And Pillar 4 is academic industry networks.
Academic industry networks, is that just, university research labs?
It's more integrated than that. They have these things called New Research and Development Institutes and RTIs. They tie university research directly to factory floors. It's not just about writing papers. It's about a company coming to a university with this specific production problem. Our battery yield is too low, and the researchers are tasked with solving it. It collapses the time between a lab discovery and a commercial product.
So when we look at Tesla building this AI center, from the Chinese perspective, it's not just a foreign company expanding. It's a calculated piece of a much larger puzzle. It's the final piece of phase 2, maybe?
Correct. Tesla catalyzed the local industry. Now that the local industry is strong, globally strong, Tesla has to localize fully to stay relevant. They aren't the teacher anymore. They're just another student in the class, albeit a very smart one. They have to play by the local rules.
That is a humbling shift. But it brings us to the mechanism that forced Tesla's hand. We mentioned strict data laws at the beginning. Usually when we hear data sovereignty or data localization, it's framed as censorship or protectionism. The Great Firewall, right? We tend to think of it as the government stopping information from getting in.
That is the common narrative in the West. Yes, it's often viewed as a defensive wall, a restrictive measure.
But I found a story that flips that narrative completely on its head. It reframes it as a tool for progress.
Right.
Imagine a rideshare driver in Chongqing, a city famous for its 3D mountain roads and confusing lane markings that would baffle any standard GPS. I saw a testimonial where he described his initial skepticism of the foreign Tesla FSD. He mentioned how a year ago the car would hesitate at certain unique local traffic signals or get confused by the layered highways. But since the data sovereignty laws kicked in and the AI training center was localized, he noticed a personality shift in the vehicle. It started recognizing the specific, often erratic behavior of local electric mopeds and the faded yellow lines of the old districts. To him, the localization of data wasn't a bureaucratic hurdle. It was the car finally learning to speak the local dialect. It became an optimized system that respected the complexity of his specific world. My take on this is that the idea of data sovereignty often gets framed as a restrictive measure in geopolitical debates. But looking through the lens of this driver, it's a masterclass in effective state capacity. By mandating that the brain of the car lives where the body of the car drives, the government ensures that the technology is actually safer and more efficient for its own people. It's a pragmatic approach that turns regulation into a tool for superior technical performance.
Learning to speak the local dialect.
Because driving in Chongqing is not like driving in Phoenix, Arizona. The rules are suggestions sometimes.
No, it certainly is not. Chongqing is a vertical maze. GPS often fails there because you have roads on top of roads. And this is where we see data sovereignty not as a bug, but as a feature. By forcing the data to stay, the state is essentially forcing the optimization of the product for its own citizens.
So instead of Tesla training its AI on broad global averages, which are mostly biased towards US roads and driving styles, they are forced to build a second soul specifically for China.
Exactly. Grace Tao confirmed the center is live. That means the AI is being trained on China for China. It creates a closed, highly efficient learning loop. The car drives in Shanghai, it sees something new. That data goes to a server in China, one of those Western hubs we talked about, the model updates, and that night, the new, smarter software is pushed back to the entire fleet.
And this was the prerequisite for FSD approval, wasn't it? There were all those rumors about Musk's visit, the comments at Davos. This was the final piece of the puzzle.
You can't have FSD without compliance. The law states important data, and VO sensor data is considered highly important, cannot leave the borders. So if Tesla wanted to turn on the money printer, that is FSD subscription revenue in China, they had to build a physical infrastructure to comply with the law. There was no way around it.
It's a demonstration of effective governance, really. They didn't ban Tesla. They didn't kick them out. They just said, if you want to play here, you have to become Chinese, digitally speaking. You have to commit.
And that benefits the learner, our listener, or that driver in Chongqing. The technology improves because the state mandated that the feedback loop happens locally. It reduces latency in development. It ensures safety standards align with local reality. It makes the product better for the end user.
We started with a car driving itself in the rain, and we've ended up talking about national sovereignty and industrial policy.
That's the nature of these deep dives, isn't it? Everything is connected.
Together, we've peeled back the layers. We've seen the massive physical engine, the 300 EFLOP PS, the power grids, the living organism of the data center.
We've looked at the invisible war of the market, the brutal Darwinian efficiency that turned 500 companies into 50 global champions, and the collective survival mindset driving them.
Right, and we've analyzed the playbook, the follow then lead strategy that took China from acquiring tech in high-speed rail and solar to defining it in EVs.
And finally, we've seen how data sovereignty is rewriting the rules of how global tech companies operate, forcing localization and ultimately optimization.
It really highlights a fundamental shift in the global narrative. We are seeing a model where state capacity, the ability to plan long-term, build massive infrastructure, and mandate localization, is the primary driver of technological advancement. It's not just about the invisible hand of the market anymore.
No, it's about the visible hand of the state, guiding the market toward a specific strategic outcome. It's a powerful combination.
So here is where it gets really interesting for me. What does this all mean for the future of the car? Or maybe even the future of technology itself?
Well, I think if we connect all these dots, the conclusion is pretty clear.
It seems the era of the global car with a single global brain might be ending before it even really began. We are moving toward a world of localized intelligences, where your car drives differently in Shanghai than it does in San Francisco, not just because of the road, but because of the specific digital soul bred by that nation's infrastructure and data.
Exactly. And as those thousands of Level 3 cars hit the Chinese roads in 2026, they aren't just driving passengers. They are mapping the future of how the state and the machine coexist. We are moving from a world of standardized tech to sovereign tech. And the winners in this new era will be the ones who can build the most robust, efficient national infrastructure to house that soul.
A localized digital soul. That is something to think about the next time you see a Tesla or a BYD driving down the street. It's not just a car, it's a citizen of a digital nation.